Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Haniyeh's assassination raises fears about wider escalation. UNSC countries express alarm. Indian nationals advised to avoid all non-essential travel to Lebanon. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro says ready to present all vote tallies amidst protests. Asks top court to ensure all parties do. US asks Caracas to come clean. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Vietnamese counterpart Pham Minh Chinh will meet in New Delhi on Thursday, boosting bilateral economic and defense cooperation on the agenda. And in sports, Indian boxer Nishant Dev through to the quarterfinals at Paris Olympics, one win away from securing a medal. World leaders are calling for restraint in the wake of the assassination of senior Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh and the killing of a top Hezbollah commander. There is fear that these latest events may tip the Middle East into a wider regional war that could drag in the United States as well. Meanwhile, Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei will lead funeral prayers for Haniyeh on Thursday in Tehran. We will, in a short while from now, get more on this from our correspondent Sarah Coates from Tel Aviv. But before that, just a quick recap of this. Ismail Haniyeh was killed yesterday in Tehran, in Iran. He had gone there to attend the inauguration ceremony of the Iranian president. And Iran has, in fact, blamed Israel for carrying out the strike which killed Ismail Haniyeh. And he was, in fact, the Hamas chief who resided in Qatar. And he was in Iran to attend the inauguration ceremony of the Iranian president. This incident is expected to bring in more reactions, as we saw world leaders put forth their reactions, and also this could have spillover effects in the Middle East, and the situation in the Middle East could further escalate. The crisis in the Middle East could further escalate. And now we will get this detailed report on this by our correspondent Sarah Coates from Tel Aviv. Let's watch this.
A very dangerous time in the Middle East amid fear that these two assassinations of Ismail Haniyeh, the head of Hamas's Politburo, and also of the second in charge of Hezbollah, could potentially tip the region into a wider war. Now, we've heard from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on the back of a very long security cabinet meeting right here in Tel Aviv, where he's come out to address the Israeli public. He said that Israel will exert a cost from anybody who attacks it from any arena, saying that Israel is ready for every scenario, warning that there are challenging days ahead.
Citizens of Israel, challenging days lie ahead. Since this strike in Beirut, there are threats sounding from all directions. We are prepared for any scenario, and we will stand united and determined against any threat. Israel will exact a very heavy price for any aggression against us from any area.
Now, we do need to remember as well what we've been hearing from the Iranians. The representative to the United Nations, he came out saying the response will in fact be a tougher special operation aimed at instilling deep regret in the perpetrator. While Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, he said that Israel has brought the severest punishment on itself. Now, really, diplomatic efforts right across the region are intensifying. The UN chief, Antonio Guterres, he says that this is a dangerous escalation, while the United Nations is calling for maximum restraint.
The Secretary General believes that the attacks we have seen in South Beirut and in Tehran represent a dangerous escalation at a moment in which all efforts should instead be leading to a ceasefire in Gaza, the release of all Israeli hostages, a massive increase in humanitarian aid for Palestinians in Gaza, and a return to calm and across the blue line. Rather than that, what we are seeing are efforts to undermine these goals. The Secretary General has consistently called for maximum restraint by all.
And there is, of course, a lot of fear that these two assassinations could really derail these ceasefire negotiations, hostage negotiations that have been ongoing now for months, really yielding no fruit, with a lot of fear that potentially, if indeed these negotiations are derailed, that the war in Gaza could go on for a very long time. But there is a lot of fear, of course, here on the ground in Israel among the family members of these 111 Israeli captives, that if there isn't a deal soon, that they may never see their loved ones. So it really is a region on edge this evening. And what we've been hearing from the IDF, the Israeli military's Home Front Command, is that right now there is no change in directive to the Israeli public, but it says it will update people if this does indeed change. Sarah Coates reporting from Tel Aviv for DD India.
In view of the recent escalation in the region, Indian nationals are advised to avoid all non-essential travel to Lebanon. The Indian embassy in Beirut, in an advisory, said that Indians are advised to exercise caution, restrict their movement, and remain in contact with the embassy of India in Beirut through their email ID, that is cons.beirut.mea.gov.in, or the emergency phone number, that is 9617 6860 128. Amid international pressure to ensure transparency, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has promised to release all the vote tallies from a disputed weekend election. In remarks broadcast on state television on Wednesday, Maduro pledged that his Socialist Party is ready to release all of its vote tallies. He also asked the top court to force opposition parties to do the same.
Great patriotic pole and United Socialist Party of Venezuela are ready to present 100% of the electoral tallies in our hands, and I hope the electoral chamber asks the same from every other candidate and party.
Meanwhile, shops and public transport across Venezuela remained shut down on Wednesday. In the capital Caracas, some stores were open, though lines were long and there was increased military presence around the presidential palace. The Organization of American States held an extraordinary meeting to discuss the election on Wednesday, where U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Western Hemisphere Affairs, Brian Nichols, urged Maduro and foreign governments to acknowledge Edmundo Gonzalez as the winner of Sunday's election. Nichols said that the reason Venezuela's electoral authority had not yet provided detailed results of the vote was either because it did not want to show Gonzalez's victory or because it needed time to falsify the results. The CNE has declared Maduro the winner of the election, a result that has been derided as implausible by the opposition, independent pollsters, and many foreign governments. Nigerians are taking to the streets on 1st of August in a protest against high cost of food, transportation and other economic challenges, as well as what they say is bad governance. Now, there are concerns that the protests could turn violent amid calls for them to be cancelled. DD India correspondent Ajit Mangut reports that security has been deployed in the capital Abuja to forestall a potential breakdown of law and order.
Ending bad governance and economic hardship and introducing reforms that will alleviate the sufferings of Nigerians are some of the demands of the protesters. Government reforms, which include the removal of subsidies on imported petrol last year, have resulted in skyrocketing prices in the pump price of the fuel, which in turn led to an increase in the cost of transportation, food and inflation. The August 1st protest will be the first major demonstration by Nigerians since the End SARS movement in 2020, which was against police brutality. The United Nations has expressed concern that the protests could potentially lead to violence. Nigeria's government has also expressed the same concern and appealed to Nigerians to refrain from protesting, asking for more time to address current challenges. It has also been making efforts, including approving a new minimum wage to get Nigerians to shelve the protest. But organizers say they are going ahead and is expected to last for about 10 days. The Nigeria police have urged the protesters to hold their protest in confined locations to guarantee their safety and avoid hijacking of a peaceful process. But the protesters insist on street protest. Over 4,000 policemen have been deployed in the capital Abuja to ensure the protest is peaceful and to protect lives and property. Ajak Mangut in Abuja, reporting for DD India.
Globally, 33% of human trafficking victims are children, with majority being girls. In Uganda, nearly 1,700 of the victims were trafficked in 2023, with majority being domestic workers trafficked for labor to the Middle East. Isabel Nakaria tracks down one of the survivors who is now campaigning against this vice. Let's watch this.
Joanita Ndagire was trafficked in 2016. She was sent to Oman to work as a domestic worker with hundreds others like her by a labor office here in Kampala. Ndagire says she only sensed trouble after reaching Oman when their documents were taken away from them. They were then taken to a housemaid shop and displayed for sale, where she claims they were sold to the highest bidder.
It was really a shop where, we were put on a window. We could sit, for people to stand down and look and see whoever they want to pick. So it was like window shopping.
3 days later, she was picked to work in a home, but under tough conditions. The long hours of work drained her, and she fell sick after working for just a year. Ndagire says the family she worked for was lenient and let her go, and that she was lucky to come back to Uganda.
For a long time, I was treated. At first, they said it's cancer. Another time, they said it's the heart. Another time, it was the brain. Another time, it was a lot. I went through a lot of trauma.
Ndagire had to undergo therapy to overcome the trauma. Through Agnes Igoe's mentorship program, girls like Ndagire are being given support to build self-esteem and to help stop others from being trafficked.
If you're faced with a situation like trafficking, what do you do as a child? Or if you're a parent, how do you better take care of your children? Even simple things for children, don't enter a car of somebody you do not know.
A recent report by the Uganda police shows both adults and children are exploited for domestic work. More than 220 recruitment agencies have been licensed by the government to help carry out externalization of labor and help track all those taken out of the country. But many illegal agencies exist and are said to be responsible for the trafficking of hundreds of people to Middle East countries. The government says it's working with private organizations to crack down on illegal labor agencies. Ndagire says she returned to Uganda broken, but will continue advocating against trafficking to save many who have died in the hands of traffickers. Isabel Nakaria in Kampala, reporting for DD India.
Let's take a look at other stories making it to the headlines from across the world. Fuel shortage hits Bolivia, causing long queues at gas stations on Wednesday. The country grappled with week-long diesel scarcity due to adverse weather conditions that restricted imports. Transport unions started a national strike on Wednesday to protest fuel shortage as diesel supplies shipped from Russia failed to arrive in the South American country. Transport unions started a national strike on Wednesday to protest against fuel shortages as diesel supplies shipped from Russia failed to arrive and pressure built on President Luis Arce's government to address the strain on imports. Pakistan's black bears find solace in Islamabad Rescue Center. The two black bears named Dabu and Balu were rescued in February 2021 when they were barely 2 to 3 months old. You're watching DD India Live. We're heading for a short break, but after the break, 3 September 11 suspects agreed to plead guilty to conspiracy charges in exchange for a life sentence at Guantanamo. Even as protests continue near Downing Street against Southport stabbing incident, Charges framed against a 17-year-old boy from Lancashire. Rescue efforts on to retrieve more bodies from the debris even as Wayanad reels under nature's fury.
This summer, the world turns its eyes to Paris, and DD India brings you every heartbeat, every victory, and every story. Introducing our special coverage of the Paris Olympics. Experience the passion, the drama, and the triumphs. With exclusive reports, expert analysis, and up-to-the-minute updates. Join us as we bring the spirit of the Olympics to your screens.
Get ready for the ultimate sporting extravaganza on DD India.
DD India presents Champions Day Paris. Only on DD India. Every day at 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India Live. Another day of staggering headlines in the US election news cycle, with former President Donald Trump falsely claiming his rival Kamala Harris, quote, turned black. Harris is the first African-American and first Indian-American to serve as vice president. The White House has denounced his comments as repulsive and insulting. Benji Haya gets us more.
Yeah, remarkable, but perhaps unsurprising from a man who has a history of making disparaging remarks towards ethnic minorities and women. Someone who's played host to white supremacists, someone who's spread conspiracies about his predecessor Barack Obama's nationality, who's demanded certain lawmakers go back to countries they came from. What Donald Trump said on stage on Wednesday, whilst pressed by black journalists at a conference, was met with audible gasps as well as, frankly, extensive familiarity. He stated that he didn't know Kamala Harris was black until a number of years ago, and that according to him, she happened to turn black, questioning whether she is black or Indian. In truth, she's both. She's biracial, her mother Indian, her father black.
I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much, and she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
Her campaign said Trump's appearance at the event was, quote, an absolute disaster. Amongst a tirade of hostile attacks and jibes, Trump made several other unfounded race-based allegations, including that illegal migrants were stealing what he calls black jobs. No explanation, though, of what a black job actually is. He doubled down on pardoning convicted criminals, himself now a felon, of course. And the 78-year-old, interestingly, admitted that he would absolutely step down if he felt his health was declining. He is the oldest ever presidential nominee. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris is set to name her running mate in coming days, having announced her intention to run for office after President Joe Biden revealed he's no longer seeking a second term. Benji Haya in Washington, reporting for DD India.
Meanwhile, the White House has termed comments from Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump about Kamala Harris' racial identity as insulting.
As a person of color, as a black woman who is in this position that is standing before you at this podium behind this lectern, what he just said, what you just read out to me, is repulsive, it's insulting, and, you know, no one has any right to tell someone who they are, how they identify. That is no one's right. It is someone's own decisions. It is, I'll add this, only she can speak to her experience. Only she can speak to what it's like. She's the only person that can do that. And I think it's insulting for anybody. It doesn't matter if it's a former leader, a former president. It is insulting.
The main accused of plotting the September 11th attacks, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and two of his accomplices held at the Guantanamo prison are reported to have agreed to plead guilty to conspiracy charges in exchange for a life sentence. The deal for the guilty pleas by Mohammed, Walid bin Atash and Mustafa al-Hawazawi rather than a death penalty trial has been approved by a senior Pentagon official. All the 3 men have been in custody since 2003. Mohammed is an Al-Qaeda militant accused by the U.S. of being the principal architect of the September 11th attacks on New York's World Trade Center and the Pentagon outside Washington. The U.S. Defense Department released a statement on Wednesday saying prosecutors had reached plea agreements with Mohammed bin Atash and Al-Habazawi without disclosing the terms of those deals. Latest in the UK stabbing case, a 17-year-old boy has been charged with murder and attempted murder after 13 people, including 11 children, were stabbed at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in Southport. Police said that they charged the suspect, who is from the village of Banks, Lancashire, with 3 counts of murder, 10 counts of attempted murder, and 1 count of possession of an offensive weapon. 3 children aged 6 to 9 years were fatally stabbed, while 5 children remain in critical condition after they were attacked while taking part in a dance and yoga class on Monday morning. Police arrested protesters near Downing Street on Wednesday as Britain faced a second night of demonstrations following the death of 3 young girls. Thousands gathered near Prime Minister's residence demanding stringent punishment to the culprit and safety of children. The 30th meeting of the Working Mechanism for Consultation and Coordination on India-China Border Affairs was held on Wednesday. Further on the discussions between the 2 foreign ministers in their recent meetings at Astana and Vientiane, the 2 sides reviewed the current situation along the line of actual control with a view of finding an early resolution to the outstanding issues. Restoration of peace and tranquility and respect for the LAC are an essential basis for restoration of normalcy in the bilateral relations. They agreed on the need to jointly uphold peace and tranquility on the ground in the border areas in accordance with relevant bilateral agreements, protocols and understandings reached between the 2 governments. The discussion at the meeting was in-depth, constructive and forward-looking. Both sides agreed to maintain the momentum through established diplomatic and military channels. Vietnam Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh, who is on India visit, will receive a ceremonial welcome at 4 courts of Rashtrapati Bhavan on Thursday. The leader will also visit Rajghat to pay tribute to Mahatma Gandhi. Later, he will hold bilateral discussions with his Indian counterpart, Narendra Modi. The visiting leader has emphasized on the long-standing friendship between Vietnam and India, dating back to 2000 years. On Wednesday, addressing India-Vietnam Joint Forum, he called for stronger economic cooperation between Vietnam and India, setting an ambitious target of $20 billion in bilateral trade. Earlier on Wednesday, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh and appreciated his guidance on India-Vietnam bilateral ties. The death toll in the landslides that hit the Indian state of Kerala's Wayanad district has risen to over 170 as more bodies were retrieved from the debris. Days of ceaseless rain triggered a series of landslides on Tuesday, injuring scores of people, and several others are still missing. With Kerala government declaring a 2-day state mourning, State Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan urged people to come together to rebuild destroyed livelihoods, similar to what they did after the 2018 floods in the state. Rescue efforts are underway as Army has deployed 200 soldiers from the Defence Security Corps and a medical team to assist with rescue operations. Additionally, 2 helicopters from the Air Force Station in Sulur have been dispatched to aid in the efforts. Over 40 camps have been set up in Wayanad, with more than 3,000 people being rehabilitated. Also, IMD has issued a yellow alert for isolated heavy rainfall for 9 districts on Thursday. Rain and thunderstorms are expected to continue till August 2nd. Russian President Vladimir Putin has conveyed his condolences to Indian President Draupadi Murmu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi over the casualties and landslides in Kerala. In a tweet, he said, and I quote him, "Please accept my sincerest condolences over the tragic consequences of landslides in the state of Kerala. Convey my sympathy and support to the families of the deceased." Putin also wished swiftest recovery to those injured in the natural disaster. A quick look at all the updates from the Paris Olympics now. In boxing, India's Nishant Dev entered the quarterfinals of the 71 kg men's competition. Now he is 1 win away from a medal. He overcame Jose Gabriel Rodriguez Tenorio of Ecuador at the Paris Olympics on Wednesday. They won the contest 3-2 via a split decision. He started the bout on an aggressive note, landing straight and precise punches on his opponent to win the first round comfortably. But the Ecuadorian saved his best for the last. At the end, the Indian did enough to defend his score and secure a place in the last 8 round. Indian paddler Manika Batra bowed out of the women's singles table tennis event at the Paris Olympics. Batra lost 1-4 to Japan's Hirano Miyu in the round of 16. Batra struggled with errors throughout the match and lost the match lasting 47 minutes. The 29-year-old Batra had made history by becoming the first Indian table tennis player to reach the round of 16 at the Olympics. Also in another match, India's Srija Akula crashed out of women's singles at Paris Olympics after losing to world number 1 China's Sun Yangsha 4-0. That's it in this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those of you on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS platforms, and you can download the respective QR codes on your screens. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all parts here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.